Duval Democrats had a news conference here today, and the worry that was repeated over and over again was about having tens of thousands of people here amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we also heard from an owner of a Black-owned business who fears for her and her daughter's safety amid the social unrest.
We're still recovering from the cases of COVID-19 that are spreading across this country, across this state, and across this community. Yesterday, we saw some of the largest spikes of COVID-19 cases in this state, Jacksonville included in that.
Duval Democratic Party Chair Daniel Henry says the RNC celebration moved to Jacksonville for a reason, because North Carolina's governor didn't want Charlotte to hold such a large event during the coronavirus pandemic. Angie Nixon owns and runs Natalie's Nook with her 12-year-old daughter along the historic A. Philip Randolph corridor. She says COVID-19 is only one of her concerns about the convention.
It's also bringing some radical folks on both sides of the aisle, in addition to folks that are upset because they have differing ideologies, folks that may be angry because I am Black and I own a shop.
Nixon adds businesses on the city's historic east side likely won't feel the economic boon RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel promised, citing experiences they've had with other big events like Florida, Georgia.
They shut down these streets for security purposes, and they just leave the streets for tons of folks to kind of tailgate, and they don't necessarily come into your businesses. And honestly, they're really blocking your businesses.
Nixon says she's not even sure if she's comfortable having her shop open during the RNC. Now, Nixon is calling on Mayor Lenny Curry and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to have a conversation with her and other Black-owned business owners about how they will ensure their safety during the convention. Live in Jacksonville, Haley Harrison, First Coast News, on your side.